Let's go now to the GOP race for the presidency. Ron Paul with some new remarks saying he's drawing big crowds, but when it comes to voting, he isn't getting as big of a response. Congressman Paul has locked in only 31 delegates, and the latest Gallup poll has him certainly in fourth place with an 11% rating there in a national race. So what is keeping him in there? Joining me right now, Jesse Benton, campaign chairman for Ron Paul 2012. Jesse, good day to you. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me.
Well, look, here's something that's interesting, because we have Ron Paul himself having said that he can't picture himself in the Oval Office. So if that's the case, what then is the mission of his campaign?
Well, the mission is to win, and that was an out of context quote where Dr. Paul was simply saying that, you know, it's not his be-all, end-all dream. He doesn't hit the pillow every night picturing himself measuring the drapes in the Oval Office. That doesn't mean he doesn't think he can win or he should win. But, you know, we're having a lot of success here, and we're doing a lot of things under the radar. Yesterday, we won 57% of the delegates up in a convention up in Alaska. We did very, very well in the Iowa county conventions yesterday, and won a really strong percentage of delegates moving on to the state convention. We also won delegates in Wyoming and in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So we're accumulating delegates. We're pushing forward, and we plan to roll to Tampa with a very, very large contingency of bound delegates, and also a lot of delegates that will be bound to other candidates on the first ballot, but we'll free up for Dr. Paul should we get into a brokered convention.
Well, look, and that's a big should we. And I will say most everyone credits your team with being the most successful in terms of organizational skills and getting, you know, people out there. And so bravo to you for that. But I know you talk about this being a quote that was taken out of context. That said, if there's any sort of a message by Ron Paul himself that he can't see himself in the Oval Office, again, there seems to be some disconnect. I mean, you may get crowds, but what's going to make people go into the polling booth and pull the lever or punch that ballot for somebody who doesn't really envision himself as the president of the United States?
I think it's a very good thing that it's not his dream to take power. That's not why he's running. He wants to be president so he can make real changes, try to save this country, restore our Constitution. He's not doing it for personal ambition, desire for personal power. So I think that's very good. I think it's attractive to people. But you do make a good point. We need to continue to work harder. We need to push very hard to make sure we don't get marginalized by the mainstream media, which is very difficult. And, you know, we also need to continue to make the case. A lot of the young people that Dr. Paul wins, he's very, very strong in the young vote routine. Wins the vote of young people 18 to 30. We need to continue to make the case to them that they need to turn out. We need to get them to turn out in greater numbers. It's very critical for people in this age group. This election is now. The debt crisis is at our door. Do we want to take our country back? Do we want to let ourselves drift off and become a second-rate nation?
Okay, so if he doesn't win, what is his best hope? Is he going to try to cut some sort of a deal? I mean, have you had those conversations?
We haven't had any conversations outside of just a little bit of musing with some other senior staff and Dr. Paul. But
so
there are a lot of different things we could fight for.
Okay, like what?
Sure. Well, obviously, our ultimate goal is for Dr. Paul to be the nominee. Short of that, there are various things we could negotiate for. Lots of different platform changes to the GOP, cabinet positions for our supporters, the vice presidency, whole variety of things. But the first and foremost goal is, of course, for Dr. Paul to be the nominee.
And what's the key issue the Paul campaign would like to see lead the debate from this point?
I guess the three things go hand in hand. One is constitutional war. We only go to war when it's declared. Number two would be sound money. We want transparency at the Federal Reserve. We want a lot less inflation, no more printing press money. And number three, you know, we want civil liberties. We want to roll back things like the National Defense Authorization Act, and we want some common sense reform or rollback of the Patriot Act.
Okay. Jesse Benton, campaign chair for Ron Paul 2012. Thanks, Jesse.